Iceland, one of the most volcanic regions on Earth, has recently burst into the headlines from an obscure nether region of Scandinavian sagas and weather forecasts. The politics of international chess championships and the Cod War have given Iceland a newfound notoriety. About the size of Scotland and Wales put together, Iceland lies across a submarine ridge that connects Greenland and Scotland, and also lies athwart a great crack in the Earth's crust known as the Mid-Atlantic Rift, running from the Arctic down through Iceland to the Azores, Tristan da Cunha and on to the Antarctic. Iceland's chilly-sounding name came from a Norse Viking who, back in the 9th century, saw fjords on the northwest coast full of pack ice. Only about 1/8 of Iceland is constantly covered with ice, as the climate is relatively mild, being influenced by the warm Gulf Stream current that encircles the island. Amongst the world's most sparsely populated countries, Iceland was only really discovered in 850 AD by the Scandinavians. Before that, it had been inhabited by a small colony of Irish Chaldees, an ancient monastic order. The present population of 203,000, about the size of Cardiff, only covers about 2/5 of the country, the main concentration being in the modern capital city of Reykjavik. In an environment built from the continual fight for existence, the complete attitude of life is one of easy acceptance. The people of Iceland take everything in their stride. After the long periods of winter darkness, even the colourful roofs help to reflect the brighter days of spring. Man must be prepared to learn from the vagary of nature. The one thing they do have in Iceland is weather, and plenty of it. Whereas in Britain traffic would come to a sudden dramatic halt, the Icelander continues with a nonchalant disregard, knowing that soon conditions will improve. Soon it will be all right. Soon the sun will shine again. As the world gets smaller, the inquisitive tourist has to find a different experience. And here in this land of contrasts, rich in the unique and spectacular, he can always find room for enjoyment away from the environment of the madding crowds. In doing so, he becomes another important part of the Icelandic economy. Like most island races, the Icelander is dependent on the sea. In these days of fierce economic competition, this has become politically controversial to the extent of some gunboat diplomacy. Iceland's other resources lie well within her coastal limits and well under the surface. Among the benefits of living in a volcanic region are the hot water springs, and these are found all over Iceland. Most of the houses in Reykjavik are heated by these natural geothermal immersion heaters. Even when the temperature is well down below freezing point, you'll find the swimming pools crowded. If you have to wait your turn, you can always put your skates on. No normal, healthy child can leave school without proof of ability to swim. And with practice all the year round in the natural hot spring water, what better way is there of getting the kids to take a bath? For the more discerning, there are pools kept even hotter, thanks to cheap hydroelectric power, where you can relax in a more convivial atmosphere than your own bathtub. Though glaciers cover an eighth part of Iceland's surface, you can take an easy walk straight into the subtropical vegetation of the market gardeners. Exploiting the natural heat bonus from nature, huge greenhouses supply vegetables and fruit. From the more common tomato to the, yes, we have some bananas and oranges. Flowers also bloom much earlier than they would in warmer climes. But nature does not always work for man. In a light aircraft of the Flying Ambulance Service, it only takes 40 minutes to fly from Reykjavik south to Heimaey, the largest and only populated island of the Westman Group. For the unlucky 5,000 inhabitants of Heimaey, disaster struck in the small hours of January 23rd. The last eruption on the island was 5,400 years ago, so the scientists say. But now, without any appreciable warning, at 2 a.m., the believed extinct volcano Helgafell burst into life. A fissure opened up on the northeast side, throwing up a continuous curtain of molten lava. And in 10 days, a new cone 700 feet high was formed. The eruption column reached 6 miles up into the sky, and houses on the outskirts of the town were destroyed by fire as bombs of red-hot lava crashed through the roofs. By some miracle, the opening inferno did not engulf any homes and their sleeping occupants. The nearest farm, called Kirkjaber, owned by an old man of 85 who had spent a lifetime reclaiming land from the adjacent slopes of the dormant volcano, saw his life's work buried beneath an ever-growing blanket of tephra. Tephra is the fine black aerated ash forced up by the volcano, falling from the air like a hailstorm, and lava, molten rock, extruded on the surface of the earth. The name of the farm will live on in the new volcano, however, which has been called Kyrkjafell. Fortunately, due to a storm, the fishing fleet was sheltering in the harbour, and within 4 hours of the outbreak, the population of Jaime was efficiently evacuated to safety, though in the process, many of the boats received a liberal coating of ash. The only casualty was a small boy with a broken finger. The natural cove that forms the harbour is of considerable importance, providing the only shelter along the south coast of Iceland. Because of this, Jaime had become the main fish-catching, processing and freezing centre for 20% of Iceland's fish exports. This development had encouraged the expansion of the town, and with over 1,100 houses, formed a most prosperous part of the Icelandic community. Within a few weeks, the lava flow had covered the eastern edge of the town and was engulfing more buildings all the time. Relatively mild winters had always encouraged an early grass growth to provide high-quality grazing for sheep in what was a green and beautiful island. Now, all of that lush grass is buried deep under the tephra. Carried by the prevailing wind, the tephra falls over the town, smothering more and more buildings in what looks like a heavy fall of black snow, possibly to even bury the town, as Pompeii was in 79 AD. Houses with flat or gentle sloping roofs cannot support the excessive weight of the tephra and collapse. Volunteers, including Americans from the NATO air base, try to keep the buildings clear of ash. But the poisonous gases from the rifts in the lava flow are posing a new serious threat to the rescue workers. Most of the Icelanders are having to remain in exile on the mainland, lucky to have escaped with most of their belongings, though many have now lost their homes. Only 2 of the houses are said to have been insured against volcanic eruption. Everyone rushed to be insured when the nearby volcanic island of Surtsey was formed, but that was 10 years ago, and since then, payments had been allowed to lapse. Relief funds from foreign countries have been received, but it's likely that the Icelandic nation will have to withstand temporary tax increases to ease both the loss of the Westman Islanders and also the country's economy. The very loss of the many fish processing plants that provide their livelihood only adds to the tragedy. Much of the equipment and supplies of fish have been saved as the workers struggle against time. Barriers are built up out of the tephra to keep the lava flow back, a task that proves almost impossible when overnight a bulldozer can disappear under a new fall of ash. The temperature of the molten molten lava has been measured at 1,030 degrees centigrade, and during some periods of increased activity has been moving at 3 feet per second. The flow has now spread over a front a half-mile wide and 60 feet deep, engulfing everything in its path. Lava eventually comes to the sea, and like an avalanche, it tumbles into the icy water, making it bubble and boil, and sending billowing clouds of steam up miles into the sky. This relentless energy, forming a new peninsula to the northeast of the island, seems to have one single and terrible aim in life: to block the harbour mouth. In doing so, this ponderous tidal wave of rock will also sever the fresh water pipes and electricity lines from the mainland. These could be replaced, and if the volcano condescends to spare most of the town, plans are already afoot to cut through a shingle bank on the north side of the harbour and make a new entrance. Then shelter would at least be provided for the fishing fleet and could help to bring back life to the island. Meanwhile, the volcano continues on its mission of self-destruction to bury the island. Like an overflowing fountain, Kirkerfell continues to blast out barrel-sized chunks that rain down the side of the cone. The entire landscape, like the creation of a new world, becomes a vast scene of violent desolation. Toxic gases percolating up from the subterranean inferno are blown away from the town by the prevailing wind. But at lower levels and in basements, gas pockets form. This added danger for rescue workers forces them to seek accommodation in the higher parts of the town. The flow of lava decreased after the initial onset, but became a boiling cauldron trapped like a reservoir behind a dam of its own formation. The continual storm of tephra abated, the wind again acting as savior. Even so, the town had partially vanished. What remained looked like a film set for a science fiction war. The major battle for Jaime had still to be fought. On the 19th of February, the north side of the mountain collapsed, and a 100-foot wall of slag with a molten interior came spilling into the town. Within 5 days, 120 buildings were lost, smoldered into raging infernos, then smashed, ground into rubble to vanish forever under the molten extrusion. This wall advanced 450 feet a day, destroying over 1/3 of the houses on the island before coming to a solid and final stop. "12 months after the original outbreak, heat continued to be expelled from the lava field and the overwhelmed streets. Where the lava flowed into the sea, it was to increase the area of the island by over 1 square mile. Scientists and relief workers alike are drawn by the fantastic sight of steam billowing up in majestic clouds, a fascination that peacefully reflected the violence of the eruption. But when would the eruption end? The volcano was declared officially inactive in mid-June, and it was up to the indomitable spirit of the Icelandic race to encourage thoughts of building a future. The whole economy of Iceland was balanced on Jaime's harbor and fishing industry. The sea was to provide its own salvation. The fishermen found the lava had stopped short of the harbor entrance, possibly due to the cooling effect of the water, leaving a navigable passage. Ironically, the harbor mouth has now offered even better protection, and the resumption of the fish processing industry is bringing life back to the Westman Islands. The exiled islanders returned with a community spirit, strong enough to resurrect a phoenix from the ashes, and to prove wrong gloomy scientists who said the island would never again become habitable. The mammoth task of clearing away ash and rebuilding is a challenge accepted by all. The will of the people alone guarantees full revival of the social and economic life. Jaime can and is flourishing again. For the islanders, a myth has come true. Ever since a so-called Turkish invasion of Jaime in 1627, legend has held that disaster would return to the island when 3 things happened. If the village was to expand beyond the Hashstein, a high marker stone, that the well runs dry, and the son of a bishop becomes minister of the church. In January 1973, the ever-expanding town had passed the hash time. The well had been filled in after a small child had fallen in and died. And the son of a bishop had just been appointed to the island. The experts may wonder why a dormant volcano should become active after 5,500 years. But the people of Jaime already have the answer on the buried island.